Hi everybody, I'm back. Today I'm gonna talk about trends. I remember, growing up in the funeral home, most of the 80s and most of the 90s even, the trend back then was to have like multiple day viewings, sometimes 2 or 3 days of wakes that were 2 to 4 and then 7 to 9 and then the day of the funeral and then you go to the cemetery, the church. Recently we're seeing some different trends. We're not seeing the 2-day viewings as much, and when people do have wakes, the average is usually about 3 hours. And it's nice to be a little mindful about wakes because honestly, if you're not expecting a ton of people to come through, setting up, say, a 4-hour wake is a long commitment. If you publicize that a wake is from, say, 4 to 8, then essentially you're promising to be at the funeral home to receive people from 4 to 8. And if people aren't coming pretty consistently, that 4 hours to the family can feel like 7. 3 hours at our funeral home we're seeing is more of the average, whether it's not like a ton of people or I'd say in a range between 100 to sometimes 1,000 people we've seen come through in a 3-hour period. And it's a lot more manageable for the family as a length of time to be there, and also for the public to have enough time to either, come after work or have time to have dinner and then come after. It's usually more flexible for everyone. Another trend that we're seeing, and I can kind of actually thank the pandemic for this. Not a lot of great things came out of the pandemic. You don't hear a lot of, thankfulness for this crazy time that we all went through in this global pandemic. But I will say one thing that I was pleased to see was families embracing the private elements of funeral service. We were kind of forced to, and a lot of families, who would normally have a little bit of private time in the morning, say half an hour, and then normally there'd be an hour to an hour and a half of public visitation before we get ready to line up in procession to go to church, and then we'd go to church, and then we'd go to the cemetery. It's a pretty long day, and only about 30 minutes of that would be private. With the pandemic, we were forced to kind of change how we do things. A lot of times, it was easiest to have any attendees meet directly at church, and only the family would come to the funeral home in the morning. So the morning became more intimate and a little more private. We always, even before the pandemic, made sure to embrace the time with the family as very special with their last goodbyes. We'd always include grandchildren and pallbearers in the family when we'd close the casket. It's a symbolic time. You're saying your final goodbyes. It's kind of like tucking in your loved one. Sometimes we'd sing songs. Children would all put flowers in. We'd all help put the blanket over. There were just different ways that we'd involve the family. And during the pandemic, people spent more time privately. So the whole morning that it would be just family at the funeral home before going to church was really kind of informal and more intimate and less rushed and less, It's beautiful that the community comes out to support people in their time of need and mourning, but it's nice to also give equal time to just the family, because there's just a different level of expectation, of feeling like, you need to be ready to sound coherent to people. Social awkwardness around a lot of these elements is very prevalent, and people have all different kinds of personalities and all different needs when they're grieving. So it was kind of nice to see families really embrace all the private elements during COVID when we kind of had to. Other thing we had families give feedback very positively about was how nice it was sometimes to have a private burial. So you'd have the public invited to church or to the funeral home service, and then at the grave would just be family members. So it made things more intimate, a little more personal. So I'm happy to see that people are still kind of being mindful about having that private time. We've even extended to some families, they've asked for more private time, and we've actually had separate viewings where it's just informal. The day before the public wake, we've had families set up an invite-only wake where it's just family and friends and people that they invite, and it's more about kind of getting their bearings, getting to see their loved one for the first time, making sure everything's set up right, getting to involve more family members in decorating the funeral home and putting out display items. Oh, the other thing during COVID too was the idea of having all different kinds of family members and friends contribute photos and movies and clips to the video slideshow. That was a beautiful collaboration that we saw. And people that couldn't come to the wake instead would send a video message or a video condolence, and that would be played for the family at the funeral. The other beautiful thing that came out of COVID was the extra expressions of grief and sympathy online. There's so much beauty in this. Whether people can physically make it to funerals or not, there's something very foggy about the experience of being a family member in that week of someone dying and then having the funeral. You're kind of in this autopilot, foggy mode. And when condolences and expressions and stories and testimonials can be given online, there's another effect where they're always there. So the family can digest it all, revisit it all whenever they need to, whenever they're ready, or whenever they need to hear it again. I don't know. I personally go back on the anniversary of all of my loved ones' deaths. I'll go back and watch the slideshow if we made one. I'll go back and read messages that were on my Facebook page from that day. So it's kind of beautiful to know that when you take the time to give an online expression, you're kind of giving it 2 or 3 times over. So it's there for the family to go back to. So yeah, there's some good things and some good trends that are changing, and I'll definitely be adding to that as time goes on. But I'd love to hear your questions and your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation going. Love you guys. Thanks for watching.